Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. It is our penultimate day for this week's theme of jazz, but unusual instruments, and we're going to be moving forward with a band that we've actually checked out before. And interestingly, the second title track of the week, we're looking at Portico Quartet's Knee Deep in the North Sea from their Knee Deep in the North Sea album. So let's dive into this and see what Portico. I think I had this problem last time where I have a really soft C and it sounds like a G. Portico Quartet is bringing to the table today. Yeah, I love the ebb and flow in the volume, in the accents. So we got a cello, a violin, drum kit, and glockenspiel. Is that an alto clarinet? Oh no, that's a sax. We got steel brushes on the snare though. Yeah, okay. Oh, it's not a glockenspiel, is it? And, I said cello earlier, but I'm thinking maybe upright bass now. Yeah, it's fretless, so it's not electric bass, but it's, yeah. Yeah, beautiful track. Very emotive, tons of small little moments in it that allow even the most, even the most static moments to have character. Now I'm curious. I gotta look because I'm still not 100% sure on some of this instrumentation, and I want to know. Because see I'd mentioned a glockenspiel. I'm not 100% sure on that. I almost want to go more towards steel drum. Oh, this was their debut album. All right, so we do have a double bass, which I think is another term for the upright. Um, I might be wrong in that. If not, they're very similar. What is a hung? Because we have a drum kit and a hung, and then the bass, the double bass, saxophone, and another person who exclusively plays the hung. Although it's spelled hang, Hang. Oh, maybe the G's not pronounced. Okay, it is a steel drum, hand pan. That's the term. Steel pan is what I was thinking. I said steel drum. That's a type of drum kit kind of thing. Yeah, the steel pan though, the hand pan. So yeah, I was right. Not on my first guess, but as I listened to it more, I definitely got a better image of it. And for those who don't know what that is, let me pull a picture up real quick because the one on Wikipedia is really small. Yeah, something like this. Yeah, they're on the right. Um, it is like an upside down bowl, although was it I think it was a Jaco Pastorius reaction we did a couple um, weeks ago, and I'll link that right there. Um, that's gonna make a problem in a little bit, I think. We actually saw a concave one, which was very cool, but most of them that I see are convex. There's also ones like this, but this is the one I've seen more of, and each of the dips, the I don't know what you would call it, where the where it's concave, they are shaped differently in order to get different pitches out of them. A lot of science goes into it to achieve tuning on them, and yeah, I mean you can hit them with like this joint right here. You can use mallets as is shown in this one. Beautiful instrument. I use it in a lot of my music as well. Because it brings a lot of the same brightness that like a glockenspiel would, um, but without the over brightness. I think of the steel, the metal element. I think glockenspiels tend to be a bit too piercing, and handbells have a bit of a dullness to their sound that kind of places them, at least timbre wise, between like a xylophone and the glockenspiel. And so I find they're a really good middle point there if I want a little bit of that steelness, but not the piercing element of it that glockenspiels can bring. So yeah, beautiful track. Um, and now that I got all the instruments down, uh, so I want to go back to this for a second though, because it didn't say it was a hand drum or a hand pan. Sorry, is the official name for it. But it's a Hun, which is a German instrument. Oh, it's a type of handpan. Okay, okay, so now we're getting a little bit closer here. This is a specific type of handpan called the Hun, and it's a German version of it. But I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. All right, cool. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the music. So we start off with the handpan, and it introduces us to a few different elements of the song. We kind of get some chordal information. We also get some melodic information. And based on the ebb and flow of the volume and the accent pattern, we're actually getting some percussive information. It is a really strong way to start the song off, giving the listener a lot of information, to say it for a fourth time, about what the song is going to be doing, about what you're getting in store for. There isn't any rug being swept out from the listener here. There isn't any bait and switch. What you hear at the beginning is pretty much what you're going to hear throughout, just expanded in different ways. And I appreciate that. You got about 30 seconds and you know what you're in for. And if it's not what you enjoy, you're welcome to, turn the song off, to find the door and find something else to listen to, because nothing's changing. We eventually bring in the bass in a percussive element, almost like tapping a bow on the strings itself, which I thought was really neat. It was the first idea that clued me into the fact that it wasn't an electric bass, and why I started out saying the cello. The timbre didn't quite fit later on, though. But yeah, I was definitely picturing a bow and a bass instrument, and that kind of goes together. Um, Eventually, though, we move over from using something to hit the strings to plucking the strings. And the double bass or the upright bass uh, does typically get played finger picked in a lot of jazz music where it's utilized. Has a beautiful warmth to its sound, just a great instrument. And we get some pretty straightforward bass lines from the bass from that point on. It's really only the opening that gave us that interesting percussive element. About the time that the bass switches over to the uh, picking rather than the tapping, the drums come in to fill in that percussive element, and we got steel brushes on the snare, giving it this nice light attack. And some light cymbal work, really keeping the groove while keeping the energy down. This is a song that's supposed to be chilled to, it's very relaxing. And the saxophone comes in very quietly to a point that I initially misidentified it as a violin. But the timbre just wasn't really powerful, and the airflow required to play it was just on the brink of not playing it at all. So the full body of the timbre wasn't visible, audible, until probably a good 30 or 40 seconds from the first time we heard the instrument. Um, and I just wasn't getting enough information to get a proper read on it. But I really like this because it plays into the second section I want to talk about here, is dynamics. All right, all these instruments come together to create this really smooth, laid back, chill opening section, and eventually what we finish on as well. But to me, the really important part isn't what they're doing, but how they're doing it. We even see from the very beginning on the steel pan the rising and falling of volume and rhythmic dynamics, and having this ebb and flow, which I think works perfectly. The idea of being in a sea, knee deep in the North Sea, even. And, seas have waves, they have ebb and flows, there's motion to them constantly. And embodying that in the music right from the start, I think, is important too. We can also kind of view it from a visual concept as well. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. People rarely start off their ocean or sea or beach experience in the middle of the water. You usually have to walk into it. And so if you're moving towards the beach line where the water meets the land kind of idea. Um, the first thing you're going to hear is the quiet sloshing of the waves coming up on the shore and then retreating back out. And I kind of picture that as the steel drum stuff that we hear, the steel pan stuff we hear at the beginning. Um, and as we get closer to the water and eventually get into it, that's when we begin to have more elements. The volume rises a little bit, but we still have this waviness to a lot of the dynamic elements in the track. And all of it just kind of comes together. I think even if the song's title had nothing to do with water, I still probably would have picked up on several elements of this rising and falling pattern. I don't know if I would have attributed it specifically to a body of water, but many of the properties are certainly clear and present in this track. And a lot of it comes down to the finesse of the performancers, the musicians, the performance of the musicians. I cannot speak today. And how they're interpreting the notes on the paper and bringing that extra flourish to the performance itself through the dynamic diversity. Now, of course, we don't just have our A section. Something happens in our B section. This was like 2.5 minutes in, maybe 3 minutes in, and we reached a new point of volume, of harmonic complexity, rhythmic complexity, energy. The volume spiked up. If you were watching the visualizer over there, it was pretty steadily just below peak. And when we hit that new section, it was peaking out the whole time. That was the maximum point of our volume, and I don't think we ever hit it outside of this section. So it makes it the the loudest part of the song by far. We also have increased dynamic elements in the attacks. The brush strokes against the snare are louder. There's a lot more impact there. It's a very light way to hit a snare entirely. You can't really get a lot of punch out of it, not like you could with the drumstick, but it still has more impact than otherwise. The hand pan, the steel pan, has more impact through it as well. The bass is louder and wider than usual, and our saxophone is an exceptionally large sound as well, going with a lot of air pressure and volume to achieve this extra power. Harmonically, the steel pan and the saxophone move into chromatic elements that introduce atonality and occasionally even dissonance into the works, that paired with the rising intensity of the volume and other dynamic components have a sense of tension to the section. I'm not sure what it's supposed to symbolize, but we moved from something that is exceptionally chill and laid back with a general flow to it to something that is loud and abrasive and full of tension and maybe even anxiety at points. It feels existential at times, even, but as quickly as it comes in, it also leaves. And we return back to our A section to wrap the song up. I don't know how to interpret this song. It might even be helpful to think outside the bounds of water, but I've already stuck myself there and I'm finding it difficult to escape from those constraints. Um, but even just the general idea of chill and relaxed versus tense and anxious is something that is vague enough to be applied to a lot of different things. So it probably helps to keep it constrained to the title, assuming that it is all working together to tell a specific thing. And unfortunately, I lack the information to know what that thing is. Without lyrics, I don't have any sort of guidance into what their specific incident is. What is it about being knee deep in the North Sea that could, at times, but not all times, inspire anxiety? I don't know. But it's an interesting song that took me on a wild ride. I really thought it was just going to be a nice, chill, relaxing, minimalistic song. We have an A section, not a lot going on. We have two melodies that work off of each other, and then we have our rhythm section. And it just would have just been a nice, chill song. And, it takes a very sharp turn, which surprised me and still intrigues me. But I don't know what they were aiming for. Those are my thoughts on Portico's Quartet's Knee Deep in the North Sea. Let me know what you thought about this one. Is there anything in here that stood out to you? Anything you'd like to add on to what I said? Correct me on, give me extra context or even your perspective on. Put all that stuff down in the comments section. Above the comments in the description box, you can find a link to Linktree. In there you can find my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three of them. We have a special selection coming up next. Otherwise, check you guys tomorrow. We're going to wrap up this week's theme, check out another special selection, and look at a smaller band through the Creator Request program. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.